Hello, we are here with Cryptic Shift. Specifically,
I'm Xander. I do guitars and vocals.
Yo, this is Ryan. I play the drums.
great. First question, where are you putting the umlaut back in?
That's a deep cut, that.
Long gone, bro.
Long gone. You have to admit it did look slightly cooler, but I think the pronunciation was kind of icky.
Yeah, nice, cool, man. Like, yeah, that's a long gone thing, bro. But yeah, nice.
Fair enough. You do have a new album that is coming out, and it's been somewhat of a long wait for it, nearly 6 years. I know that it's gonna be a huge album, nearly 80 minutes long, if I'm not mistaken. So,
That's
is
right,
there
yeah.
anything other than just the fact that there was a pandemic in between the first one and the second, and the fact that this one took such a long is such an ambitious record comparatively runtime-wise that it took for it to such a long time to come out?
Yeah, it's a bit of everything. I mean, the pandemic, and then like our first tour for Visitations was like September 2021, so it was quite a long time afterwards. And we wanted to give it enough time to tour that one properly. And then obviously, like, it's quite an ambitious record, so we and
Starting from fresh,
yeah, we wanted to make it like a proper full length record, and as it's turned out, like 80 minutes, like a double album, and put everything into it. And yeah, we finished the record about a year ago. That's when we went to the studio. So yeah.
All right. Um, when I discovered the band, I discovered it through Visitations from Enceladus, and the one thing that struck me the most was how long the opening track was. You started right in with a 20-minute track. Usually, that's the kind of stuff that's reserved for a closing track. Why was it that you decided to open with the epic?
It just felt right. I mean, it was a cool idea we had, and we just went ahead with it. And the idea was like to like follow the story. So like the character for Visitations was called the Amnesiac, and he like wakes up alone in this ship, and he doesn't know who he is, where he's from, and that whole song, like, it takes him through like various events and planets and battles and things. But at the very end of the track, he's like descending onto this planet, and he sees something in particular where he's like, oh, I now have an objective. So the whole song was like one arc of his character, like wandering aimlessly and figuring out who he is until the end where he knew what to do. So that adventure just happened to take him through all of the movements of the song, and yeah, it turned out to be 25 minutes.
hmm So it's something that made more sense narrative-wise, as if you were constructing a narrative rather than constructing a music album.
Yeah, and plus it was our debut album, so I mean, just like we are doing with Overspace and Supertime, we wanted to go all out and really put everything into it. And Moonbelt, it's got like a long cinematic opening to like really introduce the record.
hmm it did leave quite an impression, specifically because of how bold the move of opening with it was.
Oh, yeah, man.
I was looking at what you have for Overspace and Supertime, and it seems like one of two of the tracks have sub-track titles on them. So I think we can expect two such long epics on this one.
Yeah, track two, Stratocumulus Evergaol, is, I think it's about 29 minutes long, and then the title track is just over 20 minutes long.
All right.
Yeah, I think like the goals with that was just obviously with Overspace and Supertime. The influence was kind of to do what we did with Visitations, but with more like intensity and like just just more of the same. So, like what's better than one long song? Two long songs, like, But that was kind of like, a big inspiration to be like, oh cool, we're gonna beat the beast. And like,
hmm
especially with Starter Cumulus Evergaol, like that is almost a direct accompaniment to Moonbelt Emulator.
Yeah, and like a lot of the riffs and ideas and story beats for that song were like written at the same time as Moonbelt, so we kind of knew that we'd be uh, approaching like the second full length with that song in mind.
So a lot of the seeds for Overtime and Supertime, narrative-wise and music-wise, were already planted by the time you were working on your debut.
Yes, correct.
All right. So then that means that you also have seeds planted for the next one.
Correct. Yeah.
Is it still narratively in the same space? Well, space.
Yes. 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 So Visitations follows that the character the Amnesiac, and
Hmm.
the Overspace Supertime follows the Recaller, and they're kind of like the same entity. And at the end, they face like a giant like peril. They sort of go through like a wormhole type thing. So in the next adventure, we'll be seeing like what happens when they like meet back up.
Hmm. So now are you just looking like one album ahead, or are you planning to have these story bits eventually go even beyond this? Like how far ahead are you looking?
Not much further than the next record, you know.
Mm.
When we think about the fourth record, we're currently like, oh, I don't know, we don't know, like where where we're gonna be, like you know, who knows? Maybe it'll be the same. Maybe it'll be a complete new concept. Like who knows? You know?
Yeah, when I first came up with the ideas for like Visitations and the whole like background of the concept, a lot of it covered the ground that Overspace does, and like a little bit afterwards. But it was, we haven't really worked on that in many years. So when it comes to doing the like the fourth record, especially, that'll be really exciting because I think it'll be like almost entirely like really brand new material because a lot of the stuff is like thematically related over like these first two albums. So yeah, it'll be really interesting seeing where that one goes in the future.
Right. But and are these two in any way thematically tied to Beyond the Celestial Realms?
No, Beyond the Sister Realms was I'd say it's like we used it a bit of our like proving ground to like test ideas for like sci-fi metal and like you
Yeah, it
know
was like it was Beyond the Celestial Realms is just kind of like all those songs were written to kind of help find the sound of the band, you know.
Mm. Which does explain why even aesthetic wise it's different from your two proper full lengths because these ones do not have your logo on the cover art. It's very clear that there is a story here because you are
yeah,
putting
absolutely, yeah.
the
Some
artwork
bands
first.
yeah, some bands like put out demos and splits and EPs and etc. For many years before they come across with their like debut album like us. And sometimes bands, maybe the members have been in a lot of other bands previously and they've like built experience and they kind of know how the industry works, so that they can approach a brand new band and like approach it directly with like a sound in mind and like a debut album immediately. But Cryptic Shift is kind of like all of our personal musical journeys over the years that culminated in like the sound and like vision we have now.
Mm.
And it's right with the when you mentioned about the artworks, yeah, it's super important for those pieces to stand on their own to kind of like represent. They kind of those centerfolds of the album artworks kind of summarize the stories. You know, they're kind of like the peak of both of the stories. The visitations from where they reach the big obelisk in the sky, or you know, on this new one where they're meeting with the alien sorceress. It's like you know these are probably the crutch points of the stories. So it's good to kind of have them highlighted as the this is what the record's about. You know, it's about the artwork, the art piece. You know,
Yeah, and
that's where it's taken you.
on Beyond the Sister Realms, that cover art was like some sort of crashed escape pod on some like green volcano world, and it was it
Way before we had any idea of a concept in mind, though.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that artwork wasn't really related to any of the specific tracks on Beyond the Celestial Realms.
Yeah, there's something about it that reminds me more of a sci-fi book artwork than an actual metal album. I
Yeah,
think
fair enough.
it's kind of like clear that there is a convergence between the world of death metal and obviously trying to advertise it as death metal, and specifically there is a long lineage of this type of cosmic sci-fi death metal progressive type, and specifically the science fiction aesthetics and the that fits into the narrative.
Oh yeah,
So
man.
was this something that you were thinking of before Visitations? Like before you were specifically looking for this album, was this type of merging something that you were thinking of?
Yeah, I mean, the old sci-fi books have always been like a good source of like inspiration and like encouragement because like even back to like the original like Dune books, like the stuff that like Bruce Pennington did. Um, you could read the whole book and you could have your own vision on it. But if you read the book and then go back to the cover and you're like, oh, I know which part of the story that's trying to like represent, and it the artwork is always like really colorful and fantastical, and even when like coming up with the and writing the stories for like our current stuff, if we're in like a bookstore or I see like online an old book cover that's really like eye catching and like mesmerizing, that stuff like that's really like we like to try and do the same, have like a similar effect with our stuff.
Do you think that somebody who is a sci-fi fan who does read sci-fi books and does watch sci-fi movies rather than somebody who likes movies and likes books, and one of those is sci-fi, so they watch them, so someone who is a science fiction fan first and foremost, would they be able to enjoy Cryptic Shift's two albums without necessarily being a death metal fan?
Yeah, I think so. If they know how to, if they know what their intention is, like listening to it for sure. I think so. Because there's like we especially on this album, we put a lot of creative time into the like sample parts and say like the more like narrative parts of the storytelling, saying the longer songs with like the conversation sections and stuff like that, and also like the sound effects and stuff like that. So perhaps, I guess, the extreme music's extreme for a reason, but I guess, they could probably take some enjoyment out of it, if they went into it with the knowing if they knew what they were getting into for sure.
If budget was not an issue, would you consider doing something about the story that's more than just the music and the artwork?
It'd be cool to do like maybe like a graphic novel or something like that, or
Yeah, like
a short like animated kind of cartoon movie. I wouldn't want
Mhm.
to, there's no need to do anything like kind of live action or anything like that. Like,
no, I mean the concept is started from like quite a small seed and it's like expanded to like something that's quite outlandish and like pretty crazy. So turning it into a live action thing, it'd be like pretty wild. But we because it's quite a visual like album that we're trying to put across, like a cartoon would be cool. You know the 2002 Clone Wars series that Gendy Tartakovsky did for Star Wars. That
Uh,
style would be really cool, I think.
I think I know what you mean. I just remember seeing it on TV. I was never a big Star Wars fan. But I think I know exactly what you mean. Seeing something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that in a death metal context, I think would be pretty cool. Uh, but what I was thinking of asking you is if you could get any living director to direct something live action for this album, who would it be?
I mean, the first choice would be someone like George Lucas, because he managed to bring his vision to life. But because like our like narrative isn't necessarily like a made for like a movie with like like extended dialogue and script and like a really like extensive um lore behind it. Like maybe like a weirder director that has some experience with like some like bizarre visuals. I know that Yorgos Lanthimos has done some like pretty bizarre stuff, like Bugonia recently. So if
Mm.
we can push push someone like that to do something like a bit more abstract, that'd be interesting.
Yeah. Usually the most common answer to this question would be David Lynch, but that's no longer a fits the living director, sadly.
Yeah, Joss, who plays the guitar, he's a big fan of David Lynch. So
Oh.
yeah, I'm sure Joss would like to imagine that as well.
Mhm. Back to the previous question because the thing that I'm reminded the most is the last couple of Insomnium records were coming along with books, short written stories about the stories of their albums. Is there something like that that you have encountered that made you think of, okay, music can have a narrative focus as well, or narrative element as well?
Not necessarily like as a direct influence, but sure, there's like probably hundreds of concept records out there, like even like growing up, I remember like I think Fear Factory have a record called Obsolete, and that's like super concept. And I think on the inside of the CD there's like some sort of like blurb that like sets the world. And it was like, oh, that's cool. I remember seeing that, but not necessarily like I didn't even know about the Insomnium book or anything like that. So there's not necessarily any direct.
Yeah, I wouldn't want like our like lyrics and like story that we're putting over to like overshadow the music. I mean, it is an important part of it, and it's there to like provide more depth than that. So like you said, like maybe little animations would be cool, or little like comic strips, but to do like an entire like Insomnium putting out like books with it or whatever, it's quite a big undertaking, and that like requires a lot of like thought that you'd have to like separate from the music. But there's occasional like little things I think we could use to accompany the music. But yeah,
Yeah, maybe for the 20th anniversary re-release.
that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure thing. That's it.
All right. There is another release of yours that I think is kind of curious because it's not something you'd usually see, and I'm talking about Pleasure of Plasma. Do you consider that as uh, a separate Cryptic Shift release that can be taken on its own, or is it just a bonus?
it's more like a secret bonus disc. Like we put that disc inside like randomized merch orders. So if you're a fan and you've ordered it, you might get it in the post, and you might not. So it's meant to be like
Just
a
like a little something extra.
Oh yeah, so it's like
It's
a
nice.
Labubu.
Not just yeah. Yeah.
All right. Um, how did the idea for it come along?
on the Morbid Angels formulas fatal to the flesh, and that whole like era where Trey was really getting into like some particular like concepts. They did Love of Lava, which was like a bonus track for formulas.
Mhm.
So that whole like mythology of that band at that time is it was like a really big inspiration point for us as a band, and like mentally as well. So it was a little bit of like a homage, like to put Morbid Angel over that era of Morbid Angel, to give it a bit of reverence and like do our own little homage to it in our own way.
Fair enough. I Morbid Angel, not especially, but there are a lot of other bands, death metal bands in your lineage that seem to have a cosmic tendency. And there are also a lot of metal bands in various other subgenres that have a tendency for a cosmic theme. But I noticed that death metal bands, like Gorguts or Nocturnus or whatever, seem to have more of a eldritch sci-fi thing, whereas black metal, cosmic black metal, is more about the emptiness of space. So something is about the emptiness and something about what space is filled with. Do you think there's any reason why that is the thematic link between the genres and their themes? Or is it just some band did it first and then everybody's influenced by that band?
I think black metal's a bit more focused on being like pretty depressive and you know, the emptiness of space kind of encompasses what that whole genre is, you know, and like playing like the same chord over and over, kind of looping it and becoming like hypnotized by the same like repetition. I think that suits them. But yeah, like our stuff is about like deep space, but like how much stuff it is filled with is all sorts of planets and aliens and ships and that. So yeah, I like the idea of other worlds being colorful rather than empty. As cool as like a concept it is.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm not sure about like you say, if there was one band that started it all, because I guess that depends on how far back you go. Because there's obviously a lot of like, say if a death metal band started it, if you want to pick one, but then it's like who were they influenced by? I'm sure, the level of influence goes back to say like the 60s or 70s music. I'm sure someone out there will have been, I'm pretty sure. Well, I don't even know, but like, yeah, a lot of like the 70s prog and stuff. I definitely remember from my time I've seen of that. Like, there's a lot of sci-fi in that kind of genre as well.
Stuff like
So
Hawkwind.
I suppose so, yeah. And like, like even Russian stuff,
Hmm.
like a lot of their early stuff is concept themed, and it's I guess that's probably what inspired some bands, like especially the ones like like say Nocturnus, for instance, if you want to pull them out, I'm sure they're probably inspired by like Rush, especially with all the like keyboards and synths and all the crazy drums and stuff like that. So
But now because we're like many generations into sci-fi metal, like sci-fi adjacent stuff, like people that nowadays can be inspired by like the previous generation rather than having to go all the way back to like the early books and like like Ryan mentioned like Russian that like personally I don't really know anything about like a lot of like the prog bands
Hmm.
and I like maybe the stuff that they influenced I take more influence like from that.
So, what are you most influenced by then?
for us, like for the sci-fi, it's certainly like movies and like video games, I suppose.
Mm.
Because that's just when we grew up and stuff. We were born in the like 1990s, so you know that's kind of the.
Yeah, all of like the Star Wars prequel era video games from like the early 2000s that like the amount of games that they put out and stuff. And like one was about like flying a ship, like racing pod races or being a Jedi, like that was like a really cool time. Like I guess that was like a big one for us.
But then also like a lot of games back then were like sci-fi anyway, especially like the PS2 era of like video games. A lot of them were just science fiction games, right? Like especially like even like games I played when I was like super young, like even on the like Nintendo 64 and stuff like that. I remember there's a couple of sci-fi games like Star Fox and stuff like that. Like those were all like sci-fi games, and it was kind of. I think that's where a lot of the imagination comes from.
Yeah, it is video games are not necessarily something that is being considered as influence towards metal music. Usually, obviously, there has been a link between metal music and video games culturally, but
Hmm.
right now, because there have been generations, the three of us are somewhat in a similar generation. Myself also being born in the mid 90s, that have grown up in a video game like environment. Do you think like the influence of video games on culture, not like on general culture, but like on specific parts of culture, on like art or on like music, is not studied enough or not talked about enough?
It's certainly not recognized enough, I believe, just because of how new of a form of art it kind of is.
Hmm.
Like some forms of art go way back.
Hmm.
Even the art of storytelling in books goes way, way back, like hundreds of years, for
Yes, it's
instance.
just a new
So,
medium, really. Like
so yeah, you'd be right to say so. I believe, like even music, classical music goes way back, but I guess, like you say, video games, especially, are still like in the grand scheme of things. Like if they say humans have been around for a blink of an eye, in the grand scheme of things, then video games have been around for incredibly small fractions. So yeah, perhaps you are right there that there is some influence there that's not necessarily studied too much, you know. But at
Mm,
least from our point of reference, sure. Even I mean, even like when I was a kid, like everyone was playing like Guitar Hero and stuff like that, and all my friends who I meet nowadays around my age who are like into metal music definitely like played Guitar Hero when they were younger and stuff like that, And I guess that just replaced playing like air band or like air guitar with your friends to like records, you know what I mean? So yeah, I guess there's like an influence there. But yeah, I guess video games, at least for us and like the imaginative creativity through the form of like the sci-fi concept. It definitely comes from like say more video games and movies than like traditional like sci-fi art or sci-fi books.
Yeah, like growing up in that era of like the Star Wars prequels and the video games, that kind of give us a like foundational thing to base all of our like interest that stuff that we would be interested in later on in life. So like naturally we just gravitate towards that, I think.
yeah. It is quite, let's say, a watershed moment. Having seen some death metal bands, I think they were death metal who were influenced, who were doing thematically the stories of the Dark Souls games as their main theme. So I think that there's definitely a shift towards video games becoming like a cultural influence on the thematics of metal.
Hell yeah, I reckon so, man.
Yeah, the Dark Souls stuff has kind of introduced a lot of people to like having like deep stories, but like presented in like an abstract way. So that's cool.
hmm do you think there is some gatekeeping uh, that is exists within like the sci-fi community for from people who got into it through a video game medium rather than from the old classics?
I don't care. I mean, it's all just sci-fi, man. It's all cool.
But yeah,
I,
I don't know. I don't
I
know.
can imagine there being some elitists who could be like, well, this medium is too new for you to be what got you into this. Just like how people would be like, oh, you got into metal through Linkin Park, you should have gotten to it through Black Sabbath.
Yeah, of course, but I don't know, bro. Like, yeah, fuck that. Like, I don't know. I've never had no one question us or whatever. It is
Mm.
what it is.
Yeah, maybe you're not spending enough time on the internet.
Maybe not, bro. Too
What
busy
was?
playing video games, bro.
Yeah, too busy doing that. What was the music artist that when you listen to it, that was the moment you could pinpoint as knowing that this is what you wanted to do with your life, to make music.
I'd probably say Rage Against the Machine. Tom Morello's riffs and like all of his sound effects. Like I still think about that quite often even today. So
Yeah, and just for me, like early stuff I listened to as a kid, like Metallica, Pantera, Slayer.
Mm, very, very fair. I'm I have sadly run out of questions because they think
That's
things
good, bro.
went much smoother than I imagined. Uh,
yeah, man,
Now
cool.
I'm
Yeah,
I'm gonna freestyle a couple of questions. First, on a level from 1 to 10, how hyped are you for the next Dune movie?
I'm on like 9.5. I think. I mean, I'm a big fan of like the that series, and I think the second book, Messiah, is like the best one. But obviously with an adaptation, you have to like take some liberties with the story. So I'm a bit worried about where they might take the third one.
And yeah,
Mm,
pretty much the same, similar. I'm pretty excited for it.
yeah, I was kind of let down by the fact after reading it and after having read Children of Dune as well, because Children of Dune also seems like a very adaptable book compared to God Emperor of Dune. So like knowing that
Yeah,
the story is gonna end on Messiah is kind of a letdown.
yeah, we'll have to see what it goes like.
Yeah, hopefully it does not bomb on the box office because I am hoping that even if Villeneuve is not going to continue the rest of the story, I hope that someone like maybe Guillermo del Toro could pick up the last parts because I would see Children of Dune and God Emperor being somewhat adaptable in a movie format. I would love to see
Yeah, I
them.
think if he stays on as producer, like they can do the whole series. I think, man. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be quite
So I
nice.
think I think our time's up now. We've got to head off to the next
Oh,
interview.
very nice. Just as when I run out of questions, do you have anything else to add to our readers?
No, it's all good, man. Like,
Chilling, man. Thanks for having us, and make sure to check out the album, bro.
I
Yeah,
will when
that's
it
all I can
drops.
say, man.
I did check
Hell
out
yeah,
the
man.
first couple of songs and I like them. So thank you.
Hell yeah, bro.
Hope to see you next
awesome, man.
time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, see you soon, man. Thank you very much, dude.